الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم تخرجنا بها من أوهام الوهم وتوضحنا ما أشكال الفهم إنك تعلم ولا نعلم وأنت علام الغيوب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So we are on now Hadith 23 of the chapter of repentance. Got one more to go after this and then on to the next chapter. And this hadith is related from Ibn Abbas. So it says, وَعَنِ ابْنِ عَبَّاسٍ وَأَنِسِ ابْنِ مَالِكٍ. So it's from both of them. There's two riwayahs, two narrations. There's one from Ibn Abbas and there's one from Anas ibn Malik. radiyallahu anhum. May Allah be pleased with them all. I.e. the father of Abbas as well. The father of Abbas. Son Abdullah ibn Abbas and his father. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and that the emissary of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, what did he say? لو أن لابن آدم واديا من ذهب أحب أن يكون له واديان. So if we were to suppose that the son of Adam, the human being, were given one valley of a kind of gold, he said he would love that he have two. وَلَنْ يَمْلَأَ فَاهُ, and nothing will fill his mouth إِلَّا التُّرَابِ, except for soil. وَيَتُوبُ اللَّهُ عَلَى مَنْ تَابَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts the repentance, gives the tawfiq, gives the person the ability to repent, whoever does so. مُتَّفَقٌ عَلَيْهِ, Bukhari and Muslim. So this is an interesting hadith, this one, because there was a bit of confusion regarding it, whether it's actually a verse of Quran. And the reason about this is that there's a riwayah that it was part of the Quran and then it was removed after لَمْ يَكُنِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. But the strongest position is that it was just the Prophet ﷺ commentating after the surah was revealed. But what it does do, it gives us a bit of context, and so about why this was revealed. So before we look at that, the interesting thing here is that it's saying that the son of Adam will never be fulfilled when it comes to the dunya. And this is I find this fascinating, this, because if you think about when the Adam was created, what happened? Allah fashioned him from clay, and then Shaitan came to check out the competition. So he encircled him, and then because Shaitan's of a vaporous nature, he went into the body of Adam to check him out, and then came out of him, and he said that this is something that will never be able to control himself. Why? Because he realized that Adam was hollow. And the nature of someone that's hollow, if you are hollow, you always feel that you need something. Internally, if you think, I'm hollow, you're thinking, I'm going to need something to fill that thing. So Shaitan, that was his judgment of us. He says, you're not even worthy of competition. I can get the better of you, and I'm superior to you. But he didn't realize that Allah, what did he do after that? After he fashioned Adam from the clay, then afterwards he breathed the soul, the spirit into him. And so what we learn from this is that, yes, the reality is if we attach ourselves to external elements, things outside of ourselves, we will never ever feel content, ever. But that if we connect to our true essence, then we will feel contentment. And that's all. If you look at all contemplative practices, be they Muslim or non-Muslim, the whole focus of these practices, meditative practices, is connecting. How do they connect primarily? They connect to the breath. And the breath's really interesting because the breath is the ruh. There's a subtle link between the ruh and the breath is not the ruh, but there's a subtle link between the two, because the spirit, we don't see its essence. It's impossible to see its essence. We know when it's there. There's your lovely wife or husband next to you in bed, and you see them, and you feel an affinity towards them. Then you wake up in the morning, God forbid, and their soul's left them. You pick up that there's a soul left, and then suddenly you become repelled by them. So what is it that attracted you to them? They have this soul, And if we do that to other people, then that's what we should do to ourselves. In that the way that we feel an infinity and a connection to ourselves is by connecting our soul. What's one of the most practical ways to do that is to connect with the breath, because they're very, very similar. The breath we don't see, and reality, the soul we don't see, and the breath we don't see. Like the wind, the same in Arabic, ruh, it comes riyah. It's just from the same root, because you see its effects, but you don't see its essence. And it's something so subtle that when you really try to get down to what it is, you can't really understand it. And this is why they say in the Quran, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the soul. This was a catch-22 question, wasn't it? When they asked the Prophet ﷺ, tell us about the soul then. If you're really a prophet, answer this question. And Allah answered it for him. Say, that it's a matter of your Lord. It's beyond your capability to understand, and you've not been given any knowledge of it whatsoever. What's that mean though? You've not been given knowledge. You can't explain what the ruh is with words. It's beyond words. Just like its essence is beyond us trying to pinpoint it and identify it. The ruh is something that you experience. It's an experiential thing. It's not something that's rational, that you can rationalize and explain and so forth. And so that's what's so beautiful about that verse. So we've sometimes got to click off from this and just connect with who we are and so forth. And then when we do that, we feel elements of, it's not that bad. The problem is, if we're always outside, in order for me to feel content, I've got to have a cigarette. In order for me to feel content, I've got to get that next book. In order to get contentment, I need to have that next chocolate bar. In order, and so forth and so forth. As long as you are trying to obtain self-contentment from something outside of you, you'll never feel ultimately fulfilled. That's the reality. Whether it's religious practice, whether it's dunya, this is taking it from another angle. And I experienced this. When you become a Muslim, when you start practicing, you think, I want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you start doing loads of practice. You start knocking out all the nafls and all the, I'm going to get there and I'm going to become connected with Allah. And you start doing all those acts. But then what happens is, you near enough send yourself into an anxiety attack. Because if you approach it like you believe you're getting to Allah through your actions, then what's going to happen is that you will always feel unfulfilled. Because you've lost the whole point. You do the actions to express your slavehood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and appreciation. When an act of worship or any sort of spiritual practice is practiced in order to be grateful to Allah, you always feel fulfilled by it. And that's why the whole point of the prayer, what's the first thing we say in the prayer? Alhamdulillah. But, alhamdulillah is alhamdulillah. Another rakah. When am I going to get there? And then you'll never feel alhamd like that. Because it's just about the next thing. And this is what they call, and this doesn't even relate to. So when I was approaching this, I got to a point that I call 35. At 35 to 40, you hit midlife crisis. I believe you can abuse your body from eat what you want, do what you want, don't sleep, all sorts of stuff. When you hit 35, all of a sudden your body starts going, and you go, my God, what's going on? I can't. And then you have to ask yourself, where are you going in life? Yeah. I wish someone explained to me that's what it was. And so then I said, I need to. And it was really interesting. When I started doing some therapy work with Hakim Archuleta, we're doing the contemplative practice with body sensations. I always thought I have to do. And it really perplexed me, because I was like saying, I'm reading more Quran, I'm doing more dhikr, but I'm getting worse, my situation. I'd wake up in the morning and have anxiety thinking, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And actually my religious practice became a burden on me rather than feeling like it was my relief. And that's a very dangerous state to be in, because you're thinking my religion's not providing. We have an idea as Muslims that anything to do with the religion should provide answers. So when it doesn't provide answers, that's very dangerous. If you're not directed towards, you're not given some guidance and wisdom in this situation, because you can start saying, well, my religion doesn't have the answers. That shaitan comes straight in there. What does he say? إنما الشيطان يعدكم الفقر وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. What does Shaitan's ploy here? Because he knew that Adam alayhi salam, this was his weakness, that as long as he's looking outside of himself, he will feel empty. So what does the Shaitan promise you? He promises you faqr. What's faqr? Faqr is poverty. But what is poverty? If you think about it, poverty is need. That's the reality. So need is where you need something outside of you. So that's where Shaitan comes. And he can come in all sorts of guises. If you're into spirituality, he'll be the most spiritual person. Like, oh, you're not doing enough. You need to do this and do this. You need to focus and do this and do this. He'll send you on the right merry-go-round. And that's where he gets you. Then what does it say? He commands you to do fahsha, complete indecency. What's fahsha? Fahsha from this perspective I'm looking at it. Obviously fahsha means to be indecent. Just laud it basically. You just don't have a care and you just do all the sort of atrocious, indecent things. That's fahsha. But from this aspect, it's where you go, well, to the hell with it. Basically, I'm just going to do it. I'm useless anyway. He's got you with the faqr, and you've burnt yourself out because you always need. And then he says, well, what are you going to do? So you just say, forget it all. And you just completely just let things go. That's where he traps you in these two little, gets you here and gets you there. So when I went back, when I was doing this practice, it was really interesting. At one point, I opened my eyes after the hour of the work I was doing with him. I said, it doesn't matter. I'm running after thinking, it's not there, it's in here. And then when I experience that, it's not a logical thing. If you try to do this from an intellectual point of view, it doesn't work. And that's the problem with a lot of our scholarship and our spiritual teachings. It's all CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. It's telling you should be doing. Yeah, I should be doing that. But do you do it? That's the problem. We're constantly telling ourselves, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. So when when I was a kid and I wouldn't finish my plate, my dad says, "Do you realise that there are hungry people in the world?" Yes. Do you think that they would like to eat that food and they'd need that? Yes. Well, shouldn't you be appreciative of your food? Yes. It's all very cognitive. So shouldn't you eat it? I'm not going to. Why? Because you've not been through the experience that they've been through. If you went to Ethiopia, no, it was Ethiopia used in the 80s. If you went to Ethiopia and lived with those people, experienced it, that's going to be a completely different issue. But if it's all cognitive in your mind, we can rationalise and try to convince ourselves of all things, but it won't have an effect on us because we've not been through the situation. And so this is the problem. We need to experience what it means. So when I experienced that, it's like, whoa, it doesn't matter anymore. And then it's not about actions. And when I say this, of course, we have to have action. But it's the whole concept. And this is Ibn Atta'ilah al-Iskandari. He's got what's his first hikmah in his hikam, his wisdoms. He says, علامة وجود الاعتماد على العمل نقصان الرجاء عند وجود الزلل. He says the sign that you're relying on your actions is that you lose hope when you fall. So when I used to, for example, an example of that is, I thought, I need to pray for, I am spiritually defunct if I'm not praying Fajr every day in its time. I'm not getting up for it. If I'm not getting up for it, that is a sign I am spiritually defunct. Okay, I'm not there. And so I was pushing myself, I need to get up for Fajr, I was doing all these sorts of things. And guess what happens? The more you stress yourself out about getting up for Fajr, you know what happens? You don't get up because if you're stressed and anxious about something, your body gets exhausted. When I finally thought, so when I used to miss Fajr, I'd give myself a right kicking the whole day. Have you ever felt that? The whole day of, oh, how bad I am, woe is me, I've missed Fajr, Allah must, I must have done some sin. And you go searching and searching and searching, and you have a miserable day. And that doesn't motivate you to get up for Fajr next day. But when you realise, well, hang on a minute, I missed Fajr, I'll do that. Learn for that, let's try next time. You don't rely on your actions, you end up actually getting up for Fajr. But you don't stress yourself out about it, and you just say, I'm going to try my best the next day. Set my alarm, go to bed a bit early, let's see, I'm not going to attach my heart to anything. I'd like to, but I'm not going to stress myself out about it. You just get up. because you're not going through the anxiety. And that was a huge revelation for me. And this is when you're feeling spiritually exhausted, they call this the gap. And the gap, this isn't just a religious thing, this is like at work. This is definitely very relevant. The gap is when you're feeling anxious, don't focus on the goal, focus on what you've achieved. And the biggest problem in modern society is that, like, if you think about work, they set you, it's supposed to be office work, they set you targets, don't they? And then if you hit your targets, guess what they do?
Give you more.
They give you more!
Yeah.
How unfulfilling is that? You're exhausted. Because it's like, they call that the goal, which we have to have goals. I'm not saying you don't have goals, but the goal is like a horizon. The closer you come to it, guess what happens? Further it goes away. That's very frustrating and causes a lot of anxiety. When you're in that state, it's much healthier to look at what you've achieved rather than what you need to be doing. So you have a goal in your mind, but you're going to say, look how far I've come on my journey. Look back at the steps rather than how far I've got to go. If you always look how far I've got to go, you'll be so unmotivated. Rather, subhanAllah, look where I've come in my spiritual life. Before I was doing all sorts of things, now look where I've come. And Allah does this with the Prophet ﷺ. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. So when the people were saying to the Prophet ﷺ, revelations wandered, and God must not like you now, using all sorts of psychological ploys on him, at that point, Allah comes and says, did we not expand your breast? Have we not? So he goes back, Allah takes him to the past. He gave you the revelation. And we remove that heavy burden, that concern you have for the ummah, and yourself and the people about where are my people going, they've got no guidance and so forth. Allah focuses on the past, not on the future. And so that's very important when we fall into those things, because we can end up, this hadith is primarily speaking about the dunya, but it can be even in spiritual practice. We can end up you will be burnt out. Rather, why do we do spiritual practice? Out of thanks. That's a completely different approach to worship. And then you feel motivated to it because you're thinking, wow, what Allah's given me. But it can't be cognitive. It won't work. It's got to feel it. You say, how do I do that? Well, like for example, a drink of water. I'm parching for thirst. I did Ramadan in Morocco in the heat, so intense that people literally breaking their fasts in the street. The salesmen, that sell fish and vegetables, they couldn't cope. It was so intense they literally breaking their fast. That's how hot it was a few years back. I felt like a dried twig. There was I could break like that. I just felt so dry. Last 2 hours, I'm lying in the. And I was like, when my tongue literally was stuck to my. I don't know if you've ever experienced it. Pakistan, same situation. If you go to Pakistan this Ramadan, but then the most amazing experience is when you actually drink that water. It's amazing. It's like, for example, like like in the desert, you can imagine it. Suddenly the ground just comes alive, and then you go, alhamdulillah. Now, do you need to cognitively work? Now, before I take this drink, I should be grateful. You go through it cognitively. I'm going to take this water, and as I do this, I'm going to think about how all the blessings. You don't even know if it's intuitively, and that's when. So when you're really in the moment, feeling grateful and so forth, the worship becomes second nature. It's not something you've got to think about as I should be grateful and so forth and so forth. So what we've got to recognise here is that we're going to have this tendency and not beat ourselves up about it. Naturally, the nature of if we always looking at our external factors, we're always going to feel we need more. And even when we do that, we know we buy these things, we get into these things. Notice that our nature is that we are going to end up, not being satisfied with that and the next thing. And when we fall into those things, not beat ourselves and be hard about them. And then Allah says at the end of the most beautiful thing here, وَيَتُوبُ اللَّهُ عَلَى مَنْ تَابَ, and Allah turns to those, He gives them the tawfiq to repent who repents. And so the point here is that's the state to be in. The state to be in is that basically you realise God is God and you're the slave. And so when you slip, you say, oh, I'm supposed to slip anyway. I'm a servant. Rather than beating yourself up and saying, look how terrible is thou, and lashing yourself. Rather thinking, it's just so Allah can show you who's the maker and who's the creation. That's the whole point of it. And then when you come from that sort of psychology, you think you're not so demotivated, and you get up and you keep drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instead of relying on your actions. And so that's the important thing to take from this hadith, I think. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك عما نسأل ظلمنا أنفسنا لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكن من الخاسرين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين.